There may be a machine hidden inside the tallest building in your city. A machine designed to move. Most people never realize it exists. Yet without it, some skyscrapers would sway far more than the people inside would ever be comfortable with. And that raises a strange question. Why would engineers spend millions of dollars placing a giant moving object inside a building they are trying to keep stable? The answer begins with a secret most people never learn about skyscrapers. They were never designed to stand perfectly still. In fact, the tallest buildings on Earth are designed to move. Right now, as you watch this video, the skyscrapers around the world may be shifting by a few inches, responding to forces most people cannot see. Not because something is wrong, not because they are unsafe, and not because engineers made a mistake. They move because movement is part of their survival. That sounds impossible at first. When we look at a skyscraper, we see strength, steel, concrete, glass, something so massive that it appears untouched by the world around it. Yet high above the streets, something quietly extraordinary is happening. The building is responding to its environment, and hidden within that response is a lesson about strength that applies far beyond engineering. But before we uncover the machine hidden inside some of the tallest buildings on Earth, you first need to understand what the wind is really doing to them. Most people imagine that wind simply passes around a skyscraper. The reality is far more interesting. Hours before anyone inside notices anything, the building has already begun to respond. Not because it can predict the future, not because it is alive. Yet something inside the structure is reacting to forces nobody can see. How? The answer begins with the air itself. As wind approaches a tall building, it does not flow evenly around it. Some air speeds up, some slows down, some changes direction entirely. Pressure begins building on one side of the structure, while pressure decreases on the other. Tiny forces start pushing against millions of pounds of steel and concrete. Individually, those forces seem insignificant. Together, they can influence an entire skyscraper. And the taller the building becomes, the more important those forces become. What makes this remarkable is that the movement often begins before anyone realizes it. People continue answering emails, holding meetings, looking out the windows. Everything feels perfectly still. Yet deep within the structure, forces are already being measured, distributed, and absorbed. Researchers have discovered that wind is one of the greatest challenges skyscrapers face. Not because it is strong enough to knock them over, but because it never stops testing them. Day after day, year after year, storm after storm. The building exists inside a world of constant pressure and adjustment. And that leads to an even more surprising discovery. Engineers eventually realized that trying to eliminate those forces was never the answer. Few people understand that engineers do not try to eliminate these forces. That would be impossible. Instead, they design skyscrapers to acknowledge them, to work with them, to adapt to them. And that idea is surprisingly familiar. Because people often spend enormous amounts of energy trying to create lives without pressure, without uncertainty, without discomfort. We imagine that strength means becoming completely unaffected by the world around us. Yet nature rarely works that way. And neither does engineering. The skyscraper survives not because it ignores the wind. It survives because it accepts that the wind exists. That changes everything. When engineers analyze a building, they are not asking whether it can avoid forces. They are asking whether it can respond to them safely. The difference sounds small, but it is not. One approach assumes the world should stop pushing. The other assumes the world will continue pushing forever. The second approach is the one that works. There is something quietly extraordinary about that lesson. Because every day, whether we realize it or not, we experience our own versions of these invisible forces. Expectations, responsibilities, setbacks, uncertainty. Like the wind around a skyscraper, many of those forces remain invisible to everyone except the person experiencing them. Pressures that shape our decisions long before anyone else can see them. And yet they matter. They shape us. They influence our direction. They test our design. The discovery began with a simple question. If wind can move a skyscraper, could something inside the building move as well? At first, the idea sounded strange. Why would engineers place a massive moving object inside a structure they are trying to stabilize? But the answer changed skyscraper design forever. Hidden inside some of the world's tallest buildings is an enormous weight. Not for decoration, not for storage, not for construction. Its only purpose is to move. When the building sways one way, the weight moves the other. When the wind pushes, the weight pushes back. And together, they help keep the structure balanced. This system is called a tuned mass damper. Some weigh hundreds of tons. Others are as tall as several floors of a building. Yet most people working inside these skyscrapers never know it exists. Above their heads, behind walls, and hidden from public view, this giant machine quietly performs the same task every day. Not by stopping movement, but by controlling it. That may be the most surprising lesson of all. The goal was never to eliminate motion. The goal was to make motion survivable. What makes the tallest buildings remarkable is not that they avoid those tests. It is that they were built expecting them. Built knowing they would come. Built understanding that pressure is not evidence of failure. Pressure is evidence that the structure is alive within its environment. And once engineers accepted that reality, they discovered something even more surprising. The building was not merely responding to the world around it. It was learning how to respond more effectively. Modern skyscrapers are filled with sensors. Thousands of them. Some measure movement. Others track vibration. Others monitor stress deep within the structure. Together, they create a picture of how the building behaves over time. Most people never realize that a skyscraper carries a kind of memory. Not memory in the way humans do, but a record of every force it was designed to face. Every storm, every strong wind, every shift in temperature. Engineers study these patterns constantly, because the more they understand the building, the better they can prepare it for the future. And that brings us. What makes this hidden machine remarkable is not its size. It is what it represents. For centuries, builders believed strength came from resisting force. Build thicker walls, use stronger materials, make the structure more rigid. And for a long time, that approach worked. But skyscrapers introduced a new challenge. The higher a building rises, the more the wind becomes part of its story. Engineers eventually realized something profound. The strongest structure is not always the one that fights the hardest. Sometimes, the strongest structure is the one that knows when to yield, when to bend, when to adjust, when to adapt. The tuned mass damper became a symbol of that idea, not because it prevents movement, but because it works with movement. It accepts reality, instead of trying to deny it. And there is something deeply human about that lesson, because many of us spend years fighting forces we cannot control, unexpected setbacks, changing circumstances, moments of uncertainty. We tell ourselves that strength means never moving, never bending, never changing. Yet the skyscrapers standing above our cities tell a different story. They survive because they adapt, and adaptation is often the highest form of strength. Most people assume that if a building moves, something has gone wrong. But engineers learned the opposite lesson. A building that refuses to move is often a building in danger, because every force has to go somewhere. If the structure cannot absorb that energy, it begins to accumulate. And over time, accumulated stress becomes damage. This is why modern skyscrapers are designed to recognize patterns. Not every movement is a threat. Not every vibration is a warning. Some movements are expected. Some are healthy. Some are evidence that the building is functioning exactly as intended. Engineers spend years studying these patterns because they need to know the difference between normal behavior and something unusual. In many ways, it is similar to how doctors study the human body. A healthy heartbeat is not perfectly still. A healthy body is constantly adjusting. And a healthy skyscraper does the same thing. What makes this remarkable is that the tallest buildings on Earth are constantly communicating through movement. Every sway tells a story. Every vibration carries information. Every response reveals something about the forces acting upon the structure. And eventually, those signals led engineers to one of the most important discoveries in skyscraper history. So the next time you walk past a skyscraper, look up. What appears perfectly still may be moving right in front of you, not because it is weak, but because it is strong enough to adapt. Most people never realize that the world's tallest buildings survive for the same reason living things do. They respond. They adjust. They learn from the forces around them. And perhaps that is why these structures fascinate us so much. Because whether we admit it or not, we see ourselves in them. Every life faces pressure. Every person encounters uncertainty. Every journey includes storms that arrive without warning. The question is not whether those forces will come. The question is how we respond when they do. The skyscraper does not demand that the wind stop blowing. It does not expect the world to become easier. Instead, it prepares, it adapts, and it continues standing. That may be the greatest lesson hidden inside the tallest buildings on Earth. Strength is not the absence of movement. Strength is the ability to keep going, even when the world refuses to stand still. So now I'm curious, have you ever seen a building, structure, or piece of engineering that completely changed the way you look at the world? Share your story in the comments below. And the next time you see a skyscraper reaching into the sky, remember, it may be moving more than you think.